So, through a combination of factors which include players' performances, attitude problems, and now visa complications, Liquid find themselves in quite the dilemma when it comes to their CSGO lineup. So, I wanted to explore this situation in a bit more detail, and to do so, I have to start from the very beginning when it comes to how this CSGO roster came to be. Essentially, it was announced on January 2nd, 2016, so just 3 months ago, that Simple was going to be signing with Liquid. And this was coming after Fugly had been removed from the team or quit. Not really sure. Of course, now Fugly's with CLG. And this all happened at the end of 2015, I think directly after the EPL Season 2 finals, after Fugly was having some poorer performances and Liquid wasn't quite getting the international results that they wanted. And so they were going to make a change. And the change initially was for Simple to come onto the team to be the team's main opper, in which case adreN would just focus on being the in-game leader, and therefore he would be playing more of a support role with a rifle, and that's how the team was supposed to be set up. Now, we see this five, with adreN included with Simple, and of course Hiko, Elysia, and nitro being the three members of Liquid that, have been there for a while now. They play a couple of EPL Season 3 matches, and this is in February, and they split mats with Complexity, which, funny enough, this is one of the only maybe 2 wins that Complexity has in that league, or they have very few wins there. So they split mats with Complexity, and then they get 0-2'd by Luminosity in some decently close games. Now, during around this same time, we get wind that Simple and some of the players aren't getting along. And particularly, it's Simple and adreN that are butting heads, as adreN's trying to be the in-game leader for the team. Apparently, Simple maybe isn't respecting his leadership. Simple being hard to control, wants to play more of a looser style, kind of just do what he wants, so to speak, just trying to make plays. And so it puts a strain on trying to put together a system where the team functions together as a unit, so to speak. And it's also true that adreN had been having issues with individual performances, especially in international LAN environments, when trying to balance multiple roles at once between trying to opt, trying to in-game lead, and all this stuff. And now, he's just focusing on in-game leading, of course, but still needs to put up frags with the rifle. And Simple is apparently going in on people when they're not performing well. Not just adreN, other players also suffered his wrath, from what I understand. But there was definitely something going wrong here. And, I mean, this isn't necessarily insider information. I know Hiko has come out in public interviews before describing this situation with Simple going in on people at times, particularly adreN, and how that caused some issues. So it's public information that this was a problem. And so what winds up happening is that because of these attitude issues, or these personality clashes between adreN and Simple, adreN was going to be removed from the team, and so Liquid would be looking for a new fifth to play alongside Simple, Hiko, Elysia, nitro. Now, around this same time, there was also lots of word that while Simple was a good opper when it comes to his fragging ability, the numbers he could put on the scoreboard, there was some concern about his decision making, that maybe he was too aggressive, or maybe he was playing a bit too risky. And so when it works, it's great. Your team gets an opening, you have an advantage, you're likely to be able to storm the bomb site and get yourself a bomb plant, perhaps the round altogether. But in some cases, his play could be a bit too risky. He's going to overextend too much, and so maybe your team find yourself in an instant 4-on-5 at the beginning of the round if Simple gets caught, or maybe just somewhere in the mid-round where you have yourselves an even number situation. Maybe Simple goes for a play, it doesn't work, he's not working with the rest of the team, you're not really set up to trade. So he could be giving an op away or giving the round away by just making, not such a smart play, and it puts your team at a disadvantage. And so the idea is that they were going to bring in Koosta, who is going to be the main opera. He was an up-and-coming guy. People had a lot of eyes on him, as he was this guy that was making plays at some of these domestic lands, like at the North American Minor, like at the RGN Pro Series event, as well as just doing well in online play in the pro scene of North America. And so they decided to pick up Koosta to be the opera for the team, and they're going to move Simple into a solo role. So he's playing a lot of peripheral roles, like B tunnels on Dust 2, for example, or just, playing the edges of the map a lot, playing a lot of solo roles. And on the CT side, with maybe the exception of Overpass, maybe Cobble as well, pretty much the other 4 or 5 maps in the map pool that Liquid were playing, he was going to be in kind of a buddy system with Hiko. They're playing together on the B bomb site on Dust 2 and Cache, for example. And that is the player on the team that he has the most ties to. So it made sense they would kind of be buddied up. And so they were going to put him in kind of a role where he's going to be by himself to make plays, but the team can kind of build this other system, in other areas of the map. And that's what they wanted to do. So Koosta comes to the team, and we do see them play a few more EPL matches where they have some instances where they split maps with Energy, Renegades, and Winter Fox in that Pro League. So these are a few map losses that perhaps Liquid was expected not to have happen. They were supposed to be, one of the favorites to be a playoff contender in the league. And now I think at this point in time, they had a 6-6 record. Since then, they have recovered. But at this moment in time, they had a bunch of teams ahead of them. Granted, they hadn't played as many matches as some of these other teams that are ranked above them. But there was still some concern that Liquid might be in trouble, that maybe they aren't going to qualify for this LAN somehow now. Also, at the same time, we do see them lose to Optic in a 1-2 series in the first Evo qualifier bracket. So now they're missing out on an opportunity to attend this LAN event, and an underdog like Optic has been able to topple them. They also lost to Tempo Storm in the Katowice qualifiers in a 1-2 series in the opening round of the bracket. Of course, Tempo Storm goes on to beat pretty much every other top NA team along the way to get that spot, but still, it was Liquid not quite reaching the heights that people were hoping for with this lineup, and so there was some concern that maybe koosta wasn't meshing well with the team, things weren't panning out, there seemed to be some problems. Now, it is true that they still did qualify for DreamHack Malmö. They were able to beat teams like Renegades and CLG in 2-0 series to make it there. So they did have some positive things going on. And koosta's individual performances at times, were a bit off, but he's had several matches where he still played well in the EPL Pro League, and he played well in these Malmö qualifiers. So, it seemed like maybe there was some growing pains going on in getting koosta implemented on the roster, but it didn't seem like they had hit, DEFCON 5 or something like that. They weren't in dire straits. They were, piecing things together, and there wasn't too much concern just yet. But then a big complication arises, right? Well, they're not going to be allowed to use koosta for the major qualifiers or the major itself, and so they have to pull adreN back into it. And so at the qualifiers for the event, they do manage to qualify for the major. It wasn't easy. They had quite a grueling series against Hellraisers where it came down to a third map on Dust 2 where they narrowly took a 16-14 win. This is a memorable event, mostly because of an emotional moment that Simple has in a post-game interview where Simple didn't play very well in this Hellraiser series. He kind of got carried by his team, and, he was kind of, tearing up in an interview with Puckett. He was talking about how he was happy that his team carried him. And so there was this hope that maybe Simple had learned a valuable lesson, that he learned that he doesn't have to always be the all-star for his team, that he can have off games, but his team can still carry him, to have respect for your teammates and learn that these guys are there to help you, that you have to play as a team, and that, these guys are your support system. They're there to back you up if things don't go well in your own individual performance. And so maybe people were hoping that this would solve some of the attitude problems, would solve some of the personality conflicts, and it would allow Simple to better integrate into the team going forward. Nonetheless, Liquid's still in a tough spot when it comes to how to, practice or scrimmage, because you made it to the major, which is a big event. It's the first $1 million major, first major on North American soil. So there's definitely a lot of incentive to focus on this major. But at the same time, they're still using koosta and all of their online play for the different leagues and stuff they're participating in. So they're basically a tale of two teams at this point. They're using adreN for everything related to the major, but they're using the koosta for everything else. And so it becomes quite a complicated mess, so to speak. Now, to add further to this complication is once they are at the major, they have a sick run. They beat FaZe and Fnatic in group play to come out first seed in their group, which I guess the FaZe match wasn't so surprising, but being the number one team in the world in Fnatic, granted in overtime and Dust 2, it very easily could have been a Fnatic victory, but nonetheless, they still do it, and it's crazy. So then, the way things work out, they actually are going to play CLG in the quarterfinals, an all-NA quarterfinal. So I guess maybe a little bit of an easier route, but nonetheless, they 2-0 CLG, a team that had also been playing pretty well at the event in group play. And so now they're going to play Luminosity Gaming in the semifinals. And in the semifinals, they actually had many chances to win this game. In both games, they had a lead, but then Luminosity forces it into overtime and winds up winning in overtime. So they lose both games in OT, and so they get knocked out, but still at third, fourth place, right? So still, a great finish, one of the best finishes an NA team has ever had. In fact, the only other team to get this far in a major was Complexity way back in the original major at DreamHack Winter 2013 when they had that win against Astana Dragons, which Hiko was a part of that. So now Hiko becomes, the only player in North American CS:GO to have made it to the semifinals in more than one major. And so it was crazy. Crazy accomplishment. And one of the big things about it is that adreN played really well at this event. Out of all the maps they played, which I guess was 6 maps that they played, because all the series they played in were 2-0s in someone's favor, plus the 2 best-of-1s. So adreN looked good in all these maps, with the exception of Mirage against Luminosity. So 5 out of the 6 maps, adreN played great. adreN also played really good in the major qualifiers. The team seems to function better. Hiko openly admits that he enjoys having adreN around as kind of a second mind to bounce ideas off of, because while Hiko is the primary in-game leader now for the team, since adreN's original departure, whenever they brought in Koosta, he was kind of struggling to adjust to the role a bit. And while he does have some help from their coach, James, adreN is kind of a guy that can help out a little bit. And so it's kind of this balance where, yes, adreN can now give you this input to help you lead the team, but also at the same time, the weight of being an IGL is lifted off of adreN's shoulders, and this is probably part of the reason why he is able to perform better on the individual level. Not to mention the fact that adreN had been focusing more on his individual play throughout this entire process. He was no longer sitting there trying to run practices or come up with strats or maybe scout opponents. He was grinding out rank S pugs, grinding out death matching, all these different things to try to get his individual skills sharp. And that added with the fact that there was probably no real pressure on him to perform, because he wasn't going to be a part of the team anyway in the future. At least that's what it seemed like at the time. And so all these things kind of freed him up to have these great performances. But people were wondering now, hey, adreN's looking good now. The team's looking better with this 5. You just made a top 4 at the major with this 5. Maybe picking up koosta wasn't the right idea. Maybe all you had to do was swap some roles around on the team, and that would solve all your problems. And then Simple comes out publicly saying that he would rather play with adreN at DreamHack Malmö over koosta on his stream, probably because Simple wanted to be the main opper. And so that was probably the main reason. Maybe it didn't really come down to skill or whatever, but even Simple mentions that he thought adreN had a better rifle than koosta, and so it could allow Simple to main op, and you'd have a better rifler on the team. And then Hiko's saying adreN will be able to give input, and so there seems to be all these pros, all these things ticking on the one side that maybe adreN's going to be the better fit for Liquid after all, despite the fact that just a couple of months ago he was being pushed out the team. It was certainly a very weird situation to be in, very awkward, I think, for Liquid. But nonetheless, they do decide to attend DreamHack Malmö with the 5 they had put together after adreN's removal, which means they are going to be bringing koosta with them to this event. And that's only fair, right? I mean, you just picked up this guy who has all this potential. It would be silly not to use them. I mean, you have 6 players on contract now. You might as well give this a shot and see, hey, maybe we can do just as well or better with koosta on board. So we're going to go to DreamHack Malmö, and we'll see if we can, have a good run there, and maybe that'll make decisions a little bit easier on Liquid. So they go to DreamHack Malmö, and they play in the group stages where they face up against Mouse Sports first on Dust 2. They lose this game pretty close, 13-16. And this is really one of koosta's first times playing against top international competition with, a set 5. He did play at the major qualifiers with Selfless, and they did not do so hot there. But nonetheless, this is kind of his next opportunity, because now this is actually the team that he was on. Of course, he had already left Selfless whenever he went back to play with them at the major qualifiers. He's been looking hot in North America, so now here's his chance, his first event on European soil. Let's see how he's going to do. And against Mouse Sports, I thought he did fine. I think he went 17-17. I saw him have some pretty good rounds with the op on the Terror side of Dust 2. There was even like a clutch round that he won from pit with the op, catching some people trying to defuse the bomb on the A platform. He didn't seem to play poorly. It seemed to be fine. Maybe he slowed down a bit on the CT side in the second half, but the first half on the T side, he looked good. Hiko was playing pretty well. Nitro and Simple were doing okay. Elish had a bit of an off game, yes, but it didn't seem like things were that bad. They just, lost a close game to Mouse Sports. Maybe there's some mistakes there. I didn't analyze it too specifically, but it was just a game that they didn't win. Then they go on to play Tyloo on Kabul, and this is a team that we don't know a whole heck of a lot about. We were going to see him at the Asian Minor, but it didn't work out due to a player they had on their roster being backed or something like that. So this is their first opportunity for Tyloo to show themselves off to international CSGO. And they had already lost a map coming into this. I think they got beat perhaps by Luminosity in the group stages in a pretty one-sided game. And so this is an elimination match for both these teams, as both their teams had lost their opening qualifier game. Or group stage game, rather. And here, Liquid lose. They lose in double overtime to Tyloo. And in this game, Koosta didn't look very good. I think he went 19 and 30. But it's important to note that he didn't even get to use the op on the Terra side at all. Even though he was the main opper for Liquid, and they had been practicing with him being the main opper for Liquid on both sides of the map, and all of their online league play that I watched, the Malmö qualifiers, SIBO stuff, EPL stuff, where these two guys were on the team, Koosta was doing all of the opping, and yeah, he had some off games. There's no doubt about that, but in general, it didn't look that bad. It looked like he was just, adapting to the team and what he was doing, but it didn't seem that bad. And then, of course, he had this game against us 2 against Mouse Sports at this very same event just the day or two before this game, and he looked good there. And now, the op's being pulled away from him on the T side of Kabul, mostly because Simple can make a lot of big plays with the op on the Terra side. We did see some of this at the Major as well. So it's understandable maybe you want to kind of give that a shot, but at the same time, you're kind of hamstringing your oppers, is the quote that Moses, I believe, said on the analyst desk. And I agree with Moses' analysis throughout this entire process that he had on Twitter and on the desk in that segment at the LAN event. Nitro, and it's sad because Nitro was having one of the best matches in a long time for him on LAN. He had been struggling the past few months to put up performances. Even though he had this great end to 2015, looked like a star player in North America, perhaps the best rifler in North America, he really slowed down here over the past couple months. And now he was actually having a great performance, but then Koosta was off. Simple was making these mistakes with the op left and right. There was this one round early on in regulation on the T side in the first half where he had, I think adreN pointed this out in a demo review, where Simple has this great positioning on the B platform in a post plant, yet he jumps off the platform for an aggressive play, dies instantly, and perhaps misses an opportunity to win a big round for Liquid at that point in time. I remember another one, I think it might have been in one of the overtimes, where he just kind of solo pushes with an op into the A bomb site where his team's not really with him yet, and kind of throws away the op to a player hiding in the back corner of the site. And there was just all these mistakes going on. It wasn't just Simple making mistakes. In that same situation I talked about where Simple jumped off the B platform, you had maybe Elish taking a fight he didn't need to take. So it wasn't just him, but you could see this flaring up of some of the concerns that Liquid had with Simple's op in the past, which is the whole reason why they picked up Koosta in the first place. It's because they didn't like his opping style. It was too risky, too aggressive. Even these games against Luminosity, on Mirage, for instance, he was kind of just making these crazy plays that sometimes cost his team rounds, or at least made it harder on his team to win the round. And so it just looked like a mess. It seemed really weird to not give Koosta a proper chance. Like I said, he didn't do that bad against Mouse when he did get one. And now here against Tyloo, he's not getting a chance to op full time, and he's struggling because of it. Now, granted, as a player, you're not always going to get an op, and sure, you do have to be able to perform with rifles. There's no doubt about that. But it's not even just about the gun you're using. It's also about the spots you're playing, the positions that you're playing, the things that you've been practicing in practice, the memory, the muscle memory you've been building up. All that's being thrown away because now you're having to play new positions, new spots, you're taking on new roles. So it's not just the gun in your hands, but it's also the routine that you've been doing. And so this certainly affected him too, I would imagine. And so Liquid, they get eliminated from DreamHack Malmö in the group stage, don't have a very good run. So now what? What's going to happen with Liquid? Well, after this event, there was already a bunch of debate in the air about, what should we do? Should we bring adreN in for Koosta? Are things not working out with Simple? Do we play with Simple out of the team and we play with adreN and Koosta, which would be, a pretty far-fetched idea. But you have these 6 players on contract, and you have to figure out what combination of 5 out of those 6 that you want to run with to try to give Liquid their best chance to succeed. Now, that was already complicated enough, but now we have this added factor released today as I'm recording this video that apparently Simple is having visa issues, which means that he's not going to be able to return to the United States to play in DreamHack Austin in May, and apparently he may not even be able to attend the ESL Season 3 Pro League Finals if Liquid happened to qualify for that, as that's going to be held in London, and apparently there's visa issues there as well. So Simple's basically not going to be able to play with the team for perhaps the next month, which that's a lot of online league play that Liquid's going to be doing for EPL, try to qualify for the event, as well as probably ECS stuff. It's also 2 LAN events, potentially, definitely at least DreamHack Austin, but perhaps this EPL Season 2 finals as well. And so now Liquid is going to be forced to try out this 5 where you have adreN and Koosta on the team at the same time with Hiko, Elish, and Nitro, of course. And so, what does Liquid do? How do they solve this dilemma? Obviously, they're forced into that 5 I just mentioned for at least the next few weeks, perhaps even a month. So, they're definitely going to get the roll with that 5, see how that works, and perhaps based on the success that roster has, that may make the decision even easier for them to make, or perhaps it might make it even harder if even that combination of 5 doesn't work, and then you start thinking to yourselves, yeah, we got to have Simple back. What are the pros and cons for which route to go is kind of the next thing to talk about, and this is how I'll end the video, is let's take a look at Simple first of all. So obviously the pros about Simple are that he's a sick player. He's got amazing skill, and he can have an impact on the game that many others can't have. It's very rare for you to have a player that can just dictate the pace of the game the way that Simple can. And when you have an op in his hands on the terrorist side, yeah, he can go out here and make plays. There's no doubt about it. There's not very many operas who can have that kind of impact. But let's take into account that, as we mentioned a couple times in this video, he can make huge mistakes. He can overextend. He can push the limits a bit too far. And when that happens, he can put your team at a disadvantage. And so now instead of him making plays and winning you rounds, now all of a sudden he's perhaps causing you to throw rounds away. And so that is a problem. Again, you have to take into consideration here that Liquid removed him from the main opping role to bring in Koosta for this very reason that I've just mentioned. But then they have a good performance with him opping on the terrorist sides and even some on the CT sides at the major, and maybe that kind of makes him second guess that decision. But now we see at Malmu that this kind of came up again. And so this is a debate you're going to have about, what you want him to do. I mean, obviously he's a great player. Even with the rifle, he's going to have a substantial impact playing that solo role he had been playing in all these online games when Koosta was on the team during the Malmu qualifiers and such. So you got to figure that one out. But he does have some cons. For one, attitude problems. I naively thought they had gotten better after his emotional moment at the major qualifiers, but apparently that's not the case, because in an interview that Hiko did with Launders, he talked about how when they were practicing for the major, which they were going to have to use adreN, obviously, for that. There was one night where Simple was going in on adreN again, and they had to to get through that night of practice, they had to bring Koosta in just to get through some games with adreN to help him figure out what spots he was going to be playing and things of that nature. So apparently there was still some bickering going on. I've even heard that there may have been some bickering going on at Malmu during and after the matches between Simple and some of the players. And so I don't think it's just adreN that has issues getting along with Simple. I think it may be several of the players that have trouble dealing with it. Not to mention that Simple apparently just controls the team. He seems to be the driving force behind the decisions of who's going to use the op, for example. Doesn't seem like maybe it is a team decision. Seems like the team's preparing for one thing, then all of a sudden the game plan changes once Simple wants to change things, which can be good because then he picks up the op and he makes plays and you do well, but it also can be bad because maybe he hamstrings one of your other players on the team, to use Moses' words, which in this case was Koosta. So yeah, I mean, just the idea of personality clashes, affecting the team environment negatively, making it harder for the players to work together, and the fact that he's a bit too risky with the op and it can cost you rounds. These are all concerns that you have to consider with Simple, despite the fact that he can have such a positive impact with the amount of skill level he brings to the table. Now, when you look at Koosta, what's his pros and cons? Well, has he even gotten a fair shot yet would be one question. I know we've talked about the online play already in this video several times about kind of being a mixed bag of results there, but at Malmu, the one LAN he's gotten to play with Liquid, he looked good in one map where he was opping full-time against Mouse Sports, but then he didn't even get a proper chance against Tyloo to really give you a full demonstration of what he's going to be able to do. So it's hard for me to really judge Koosta at this point. Maybe the hype train has come to a bit of a screeching halt because the major qualifiers didn't go so well for him with Selfless when he was, standing back in over there. And obviously, against Tyloo at this event, it's hard. You got to take his performance with a grain of salt maybe because he wasn't opping all the time. I don't know. That's debatable because, yeah, he should be playing a little bit better with the rifle. But again, he's not in his comfort zone. He's not playing the same spots or positions, and that could be a problem. So I don't even know if Koosta has gotten a fair shot yet on LAN with Liquid to really know exactly who he can be for this team. And I'll just have to kind of leave it at that. Pros and cons for adreN. Yeah, for a long time, adreN wasn't performing very well as an individual when he was balancing all these different roles. But now that he's only a second caller for the team, he goes to primary in-game leader now that he's not focused on opping anymore, except for maybe on CT sides, at least when he was playing at the major qualifiers and the major. He's performing well, and it's because he's focusing more of his individual play. Now he can focus more on DMing and grinding pugs and just making sure that his skills are sharp, because he's not as focused on scouting or trying to lead the team and all the pressure of the IGL being on him. It's also important to note that Hiko doesn't seem to be suffering too much in his fragging while being the in-game leader, which is the great balance to have is if you can have that happen. So that's another thing maybe just to point out really quickly. And yeah, I mean, the adreN just looks like he's playing better lately. Now, will that be sustainable? Hard to know. But at the very least, adreN has shown that he's capable of kind of playing a different role for Liquid and being able to have a positive impact, which you saw at the major. So there's definitely some tough choices ahead for Liquid at this point. They're in a huge dilemma. I think that the fact that Simple has visa issues now, while that certainly does suck and it certainly does burden the team to not have that player on board, this extremely skilled guy, it does give them a forced opportunity, so to speak, to try things out with adreN and koosta on the team at the same time to see if that could be the better route, to see what type of results can that 5 find you. And then depending on what those results are or how they look might make the decision either easier or harder on what 5 to roll with in the future. I've kind of addressed the situation. I've addressed some of the pros and cons of some of the different players. And at the end of the day, Liquid certainly has some tough choices to make, though maybe they're going to be made a bit easier by some, visa complications or something. But I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. What are your thoughts? What do you think would be the best form of Liquid? That's a good question, I think, to put out there. Personally, for me, I want to see how this 5 works with adreN and koosta to see if that is actually a good lineup. And if not, then perhaps you have to just find some way to make Simple work on the team, though it may be hard to do that when it comes down to a, personality level. Anyway, that's going to be it. If you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe for more. Thanks a lot.